to talk about the best story in professional wrestling right now that nobody is actually discussing. And that is, if you watch both AEW and Impact Wrestling, which I, Sami here at WhatCulture Wrestling do, you know that Kenny Omega is going through some kind of crisis of confidence when it comes to his beard. So when you watch Dynamite, he has this incredible Fu Manchu, whatever we're calling it, but when you watch Impact, it's disappeared. Now look, the real reason is because Impact block booked their tapings, so in other words, he hadn't even grown the beard when he filmed all of this, but from my vantage point, a simple viewer, it is my favourite thing in the entire world. We are also closing in on Slammiversary, where apparently we're going to get a bunch of debuts in Impact, but we also have some stories that we need to keep on ticking forward, which means now we take the finger of power and we give the good bits an up and the bad bits a down for the latest episode of Impact. That was me impacting my hand. I'm fired. I do like the fact that every episode of Impact recently has been Kenny Omega and Don Callis turning up at the building and then hoping they're going to be able to get in. It was fine this week, although I'm pretty sure Don Callis called Sami Callihan a troglodyte, and I looked up what the definition of troglodyte is, and it's basically a caveman or a prehistoric person that lives in a cave. I would not be insulted by this. Also had this amazing video package that made you feel like every single story within Impact Wrestling was more important than your own life. And look, you are a promotion, you should be promoting. Our first match tied into this as well because it was Jake Something taking on Brian Myers. And this wasn't out of nowhere random madness. It did have a story because these two guys had fallen out and now Jake Something had gone, look, we're going to have a match. And if I beat you, you have to call me a professional. Now, once again, I don't know about you, but if I did lose and I had to say, hey, brah, you're a professional, I'd be all good with it. Sam Beal, Brian Myers' protege, was at ringside, and while he did cause like a few distractions, he didn't really do much of anything. This whole match was by the numbers, which certainly isn't a bad thing, but they had a fight. Brian was up at one point. Eventually, he went for the roster cut. He missed, so Jake Something hit the black hole slam, and he pinned him. We were done. I think the whole point of this, though, was for everything that was going to happen after the fact, because Brian Myers got on the microphone, he was like, and he couldn't say it, obviously, because he has deep-rooted issues, when Sam Beal jumped Jake Something from behind. And all this was bubbling away for the big return of none other than Matt Cardona, which is kind of a big deal. He's been away for ages. Gotta imagine that it does lead to Cardona versus Myers at Slammiversary while we finally blow off their feud. And I know, it's so silly that in Impact Wrestling they hate each other, but everywhere else on the planet they're best of friends. But it's not like I'm losing any sleep over it. Talk to the back where we saw our Knockouts champion Deonna Purrazzo being interviewed. She let us know that she's done with Kimberly and she's done with Susan because they were just holding her back. And now she wants a new challenge, which is why she's going to walk out to that there ring and offer an open challenge. So she's a lady of her word. Unfortunately though, Sami Callihan then got arrested. Nerds. Now he must have been really confused because one, earlier we had learned he was a caveman, so he's going to have no concept of what the police force is. But also two, he was accused of assaulting Don Callis, and you could see on his face, he didn't know what they were talking about. Don Callis had apparently provided evidence though, and when you do bring up an assault charge in wrestling, it's always a little bit hard to swallow, because we are seeing assaults every single week, but it's only here and there when all of a sudden one of them becomes a thing. However, the payoff to this is brilliant. We will talk about it. Deonna was then out here for this big match that she had put out there, and her opponent was a debuting Lady Frost. You may have seen her in WWE, you may have seen her in AEW, so it's nice to see her in Impact. This was a weird one too, because we kind of straddled the line between out-and-out squash match, but also giving Lady Frost a little something-something, so she did have a little something-something, prove that she could wrestle, but then was forced to tap out courtesy of the Venus de Milo. For the second match running though, I think this was designed for everything that was going to happen afterwards, because Deonna Purrazzo was about to get on the microphone and go, oh, I hate everybody, when of all the people, out came Gail Kim. I don't think anybody saw that coming. There was a quiet respect between the two, although Deonna did not appreciate the fact that Gail had interrupted her, and Kim was like, look, would you just calm down, hold everything back for a second? I'm not out here to berate you, I've got an idea. Prezzo presumed that she was going to challenge her to a match at Slammiversary, and she kind of was, although Gail Kim was the messenger, because he was like, oh, Gianna, you could think you could beat anybody, and you don't even have to prepare, so why don't I go and find you someone to fight at Slammiversary, with the trick being, I'm not going to tell you who it is, which means, much like Evolution, it's a mystery. Now, I would presume that it would be Su Yung, especially given a skip that we get later, but that kind of feels boring, because when you get to Slammiversary, you want all these crazy debuts, and think of all the people that it could be. It could be Mickie James, it could be Ruby Riott, it could be Serena Deeb, it could be Thunder Rosa, they're here, there, and everywhere. It could be one of the Iconics. This was smart though, because I am now instantly intrigued about who this is going to be, and as long as I'm not disappointed, it will put a smile on my face. Always get it up. Also though, a small point right after this, we did have our Impact flashback video, and it featured the one and only Mickie James. Now this could be a tease, or it could be a red herring, but the show told me, so now I've told you. Also, before we do move on, I've never clocked this before, but Lady Frost was announced as being from somewhere cold, so she is now my new favourite professional wrestler. Swingers Palace was then randomly back next. I mean, what happens when we don't see it on camera? Although this one was kept very short, because Chris Sabin was excited to do some gambling when Moose attacked him, and honestly, I think almost killed him. So their feud marches on, and I do think they're going to have an awesome match at Slammiversary. But what the hell does Moose do after this? Because you've got to bet your ass that he is going to win. He's just signed a 2-year deal with Impact. So I've got to assume they have big plans. Chris Bay then explained why he did join the babyface side of the big X Division match that we're going to get in a few weeks. And it's because Madman Fulton and Mulabali Shera have joined the bad guys. And that doesn't seem very fair. They're not X Division athletes. And Chris Bay, he likes to be a balanced human being. So while he hates everybody, he's going to fight the good fight. Somebody then realised that they needed to do something with Morrissey, who of course has his Slammiversary match with Eddie Edwards in a week or so. And he came out as like, Eddie Edwards, I hate you because you have friends and I hate having buddies. And then he was basically put against 3 enhancements talents that you were not meant to know who they were. And he absolutely bonked them. Now I am a little worried about the future of Morrissey, because after powerbombing everybody he could see, he stacked these 3 guys on top of each other and he pinned them. And when Roman Reigns sees this, or when Roman Reigns hears about this, he's probably going to turn up to Impact and shoot Morrissey with a spear. And sure, there were some few messy bits in this, but look, he is just a human, and it got across the fact that he's a monster, and who the hell's going to be able to take him down, especially because he's so tall. As we always remind ourselves, you can't teach that up. Don Callis was then here explaining the Sami Callihan stuff, and I just want to let it be known that Don Callis and Kenny Omega right here, right now, are my 2 favourite goofs in wrestling. No one does it better. Because he was showing the Sami Callihan assault footage here, and not only was it shot from behind, so you had no clue who this guy was, I'm pretty sure the tattoos on his arm had been coloured on, or drawn on with a pen. These cops aren't very good at their job. It was then kind of teased that maybe, just maybe, we were going to have to find a new opponent for Kenny Omega at Slammiversary, but given that tonight's Impact was going to end with a contract signing, well, unless you'd only been watching wrestling for a week, you kind of knew what was going to happen. We then had our #1 contenders match for the women's tag team titles as Havoc and Rosemary teamed up to take on Susan and Kimberly. Now this one didn't really click for me, and it didn't click for 2 specific reasons. One, Impact has done this whole, oh, we're just going to grab a couple of tag teams and throw them into a random #1 contender match so many times. Well, it's the law of diminishing returns. And also, 2, Havoc and Rosemary managed to get past all their issues and become friends super duper quick. And now we got to the match, and it was super duper quick. I don't think it even went 5 minutes. It also never really felt like Lee and Susan had a chance of winning because they've been a mess recently, and it just ended before I expected when Rosemary did indeed hit the spear on Susan. The match wasn't bad, far from it. In fact, if we'd been able to double the length, it actually would have been pretty good. But yeah, it came and it went, and I wasn't able to do anything with it. Down. All About Me with Tenille Dashwood was next, and I tell you, if Impact Wrestling wants to start doing this every single week, they should. Jazz was her special guest tonight, which means, of course, given the weird structure of the program, it was Jazz that had to come up with all the questions, and when she had none for Tenille Dashwood, Tenille got very, very upset. I mean, why can't people understand the concept of her show? And it's this kind of ignorance and this kind of stupidity, which is why she hasn't been able to get a tag team partner, because nobody can figure out what the hell is going on. Tenille was also convinced that she had Rachel Ellering on board before Jazz went and ruined it, so her and Caleb with a K they just beat Jazz up. Now, I don't know why this works so well, but it really does work well, and I think it comes down to Tenille's Dashwood character. I totally believe that she's just living in her own fairyland in her head, and she just comes across like such an arrogant fool. It wins you over the more you see it as well, hence why you could take this talk show, whatever the hell we're calling it, and actually eke it out a little bit longer. I'm gonna give it an up. It all had consequences too, because Ellering and Jordine Grayson appeared on the screen like, oh my gosh, Jazz, what happened? I can't believe it. And said that next week they want to fight Tenille Dashwood and Caleb with a K. So fair play to Impact Wrestling. They will literally do anything. The sheer madness of the tag team division then continued. I mean, the amount of people that just walked out on this segment, I thought I was going to appear at one stage, and that wouldn't have even made any sense. Because it started with Rich Swann and Willie Mack, who felt slighted by everything that happened last week, but because Fowler Bar and TJP also felt slighted, they then came out and everybody started yelling at each other. Given that it was Violent by Design that had caused all this, they then interrupted, but before they could do anything, the Good Brothers were here too. I think they're preachers now or something, but they do want their Impact World Tag Team titles back, when Tommy Dreamer must have been bored backstage, seeing that people were just walking to the ring, so he went, man, I want to be part of the party, so he was here as well. I mean, honestly, this was exhausting. He has magical powers though when it does come to booking the business, so he said, well, here's what we're going to do. Number one, all you four guys are going to fight at Slammiversary for the tag team titles, but as you are all out here now too, I am going to take an individual member from every single team and we're going to do a four-way. And I was like, flub me, cyber. Where the hell did all this come from? Then I laid down and had a nap. This didn't mean it was Karl Anderson versus Rich Swann versus TJP versus Cody Deaner, and you know the deal with that. As soon as I see Cody Deaner in there, I just keep one eye on Eric Young, because if the Codes loses, Eric Young, well, he starts to have some bad thoughts. This was mostly like drug-fueled madness as well, because we had two guys fighting in the ring, and we had two guys fighting out the ring, and then they would kind of exchange, but you also had all the other dudes who were part of their respective teams, so when you were trying to watch it, well, like I say, it was just madness for your eyes. It was really fun though, because it had a mad fast pace to it. People kept hitting moves out of nowhere, which unfortunately is what happened to Deaner. He walked into the stun gun, courtesy of Karl Anderson, and he got beaten for the 1, 2, 3. So if you're listening, Cody Deaner, please send me a message telling me that Eric Young hasn't chopped off your head. We had some fallout from this too, as Gallows and Joe Doring got in each other's faces because they are both big men. And look, admittedly, it was a bit weird that the Good Brothers have just walked their way back into the tag team title picture, but they did used to be the champs, as we've already said, and Karl Anderson did win here, which justified it. Also, this was just, I don't know, 10 to 15 minutes of pure entertainment. Up. Remember what I said about Su Yung too? Surely we've got to be doing something with her, because Kimberly was all like, look, I know that we lost, but I had a backup plan, and here it is. And in walked James Mitchell. Now, the last time we saw him, he transformed Su Yung into Susan, so you've got to imagine he's come back to transform Susan into Su Yung, and then surely she has to go after Deonna Purrazzo. I mean, look, I don't know, but that's the whole point. We wait and see. This all built to our main event angle, which was indeed a contract signing for the Kenny Omega versus Sami Callihan Slammiversary main event. And was it Wrestling 101? Yes, but is it getting an up? You betcha. Up. Scott D'Amore was here as well, and he did some teasing going, well, I think our main event at the pay-per-view is going to be okay, but as for this evening, I don't think Sami Callihan's going to be able to make it. I was like, who do you think I am? Yeah, right. Not like Kenny then just ran Callihan down because they thought they were safe, when all of a sudden on the big screen, we had our massive reveal, and honestly, this is the kind of thing that I want wrestling companies to do as much as they possibly can. Because as it turned out, all this assault stuff we'd seen earlier was actually Don Callis getting Johnny Bravo and Johnny Swinger to fix it because, of course, they owed him a bunch of money. I mean, do you remember a few weeks ago when Don Callis had bumped into them and they said, guys, where's my cash? And they were like, well, we'll do anything to make it up to you. Well, here was the payoff. Here was what the consequence is. I absolutely loved this because it made me feel rewarded for watching the show. Sami then appeared and I'm pretty sure he whammed Kenny Omega right in the balls before giving him the package power driver and signed the contract. And again, because this was a contract signing, there was a table, he picked up Ken and he powerbombed him through it. He also ensured that he picked up the World Championship afterwards, so we had our footage for our B-roll when we do run the big video. But all of this was well done. You had your big tease, you had your big surprise, the challenger. You can now go, oh, maybe he is going to beat Kenny Omega, even though he probably won't. I really enjoy this program, and I tell you what, overall, I'm always enjoying Impact Wrestling. Also, Omega versus Callihan at Slammiversary should be completely different to all of the Kenny Omega matches we've seen so far. I mean, Sami Callihan, he doesn't hold back, so overall this episode, it is getting it up. Now, don't forget to leave a comment below and let us know what you thought about last night's episode of Impact Wrestling. Like the video, share the video, and subscribe. Don't lance like that, it's really, really weird. Head over to WhatCulture.com to stay up to date with professional wrestling. Come say hello on social media, and please do click another Ups and Downs video, because I watch wrestling so you don't have to. My name is Simon for WhatCulture. Thank you for tuning in as always, and I will see you when you come to my house and knock on my door. I'm like, how did you get my address? If you don't have a good reason, I'm phoning the police. Goodbye.